Dzień dobry. Some time ago I was browsing a certain image board on the internet, as I like to do in my spare time. I ran across a thread which was all about self-defense weapons. A particular anon had posted this picture of a folding knife by Mtech, and it looked very cool, very interesting. I thought, boy, it'd be great to own one of those, if not just as a curiosity item. Now, obviously, looking at my first assumptions were this is going to be unavailable to be purchased where I live, and secondly, if it was available somehow, probably be very expensive or just stupidly priced. Fortunately, a very quick search on eBay proved I was wrong on both cases. Not only were these readily available very close to where I live, but they're also very cheap, running between $30 to $40. So of course I ordered one, it has arrived, I've got it with me, and today we're going to take a look and see if it's as cool as what it seemed on that particular thread. So, less than a week from ordering online, and here we have it, brand new in a box, arrived at my door for $30.99. My own Mtech folding Karambit. Now you can get this in two different colour schemes. One was like an army green, the other was this red and black metallic finish, I guess you could call it. One, and yeah, I like the look of this better, so naturally that is the one I purchased. Alright then, let's take a closer look at it. Alright, let's take an up close look at the knife. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I opted for the black and red model. I felt it looked slightly better than the green one. And the overall design is quite simple and sleek. The screws are exposed, so it'd be very easy to disassemble for cleaning purposes. This part here is red, and the washer here, also some of the inner lining, if you can see there, is red. Otherwise, it's all just matte black. There is a clip here to clip it onto your belt, which is removable again if you have the correct screw heads. And sizing wise, I have a slightly larger than average hand, and it seems to fit quite comfortably in there. Now, this little button here obviously deploys the blade. There we go. Mtech USA. That's stainless steel, USA designed, and made in China, as I see over here. Now, the construction seems fairly tight. There's no looseness at all to it. I haven't done extensive testing with it yet, but overall I'm very happy for $30. This is a good looking little piece, and it's definitely an interesting design, which we're going to get into next. Now, the most striking feature of this pocket knife, and which attracted my attention in the first place, is that essentially it's like buying two weapons in one. When it is closed, essentially it functions as a set of brass knuckles, or a knuckle duster, if you will. You slot your fingers through the holes, and it greatly enhances punching power. Now, it's not a true knuckle duster in the classic sense, as in it's fairly lightweight, so it doesn't have enough metal to give you a real heavier, more concussive punch. Likewise, it's not very chunky. As you can see, the section that covers your knuckles is fairly thin, and so it's not like one of them really chunky, big, bulky knuckle dusters they used to have in the old school days that would give a sort of a flat plate covering your fist and add a fair bit of weight and damage to the punch. I would, if I was to guess, what would happen if you were so inclined to hit someone with this is you'd probably tear the skin on their face, you'd probably shred them a bit. If anything, the knuckle duster function of this is not going to add much concussive force or much power. It's more going to add some blood loss build up to the old punches. Now, what techniques would you use? Well, it's fairly self-explanatory. If you know how to punch, you know how to use one of these. Alright, now, as well as being a set of brass knuckles, the Mtech folding Karambit is also a knife. Now, let's just say theoretically in Minecraft, punching is no longer enough to take these dudes out, and you need to open the blade up to escalate things somewhat. Well, here's my first critique of it, if you will. It's somewhat awkward. You have to unthread at least the first three fingers, obviously, and then you can press a button and it will pop out. Now, I can't think of any way around this considering the two-in-one nature of this product, and that is just a little bit awkward. That's a minor nitpick. Obviously, probably better to decide if you want to use brass knuckles or a knife right from the outset. But it can be done. It's just not the easiest little procedure. You can't have it tight and pop it open. You have to remove your fingers first. Now, also, I'd like to mention that the lock to allow you to close the blade is inside here. So you push that sideways and the blade will close. Pretty standard stuff, this type of, spring assisted blade. Now, one little note too, while we're talking about real life, the belt clip. Now, I'm not a lawyer. If you can't tell, I'm definitely not a legal professional, so consider this a very unsolicited legal advice. But if you were to walk around this clipped onto your belt, I do not think that's a good look, and I would not recommend it. I think if any law enforcement officer of any sort or the general public saw this like clipped to your belt, that probably react quite badly, so I definitely would not recommend that. So you could probably remove that altogether on your own, would possibly be a good idea. Alright, so we've decided it's blade out time. Now, I have to admit, I am not a Karambit guy. I've never used one before. I didn't really look into them at all until I saw this inside the buy, so I thought I'd better actually check out the Karambits and what they're all about. Now, most people grip them in this manner here, and the grip on this does work fairly well for that, as you can see. It's it's quite roomy considering I've got large hands, so it's never going to be too big for your hands. Some people recommend that style grip, which works fine on its own also. But let's talk about this finger in the loop for a moment. Now, I wanted to look at some Karambit techniques online, and so I consulted YouTube obviously, and the majority of videos I've asked share of them are all people literally doing some variation on this. Like, they do all sorts of other stuff with it too, but I mean literally letting go and it flipping over that way and then bringing it back is 99% of what people are passing off as techniques for this. Now, I don't think that's a legitimate technique, because if you flip it out this way, that's not going to do much. And here, if you're stabbing someone, it's not exactly a strong grip. Likewise, bring it back this way, you're turning the blade back towards yourself. So if anything, you can only start cutting from once it gets to here. I don't know how much power that little flip's going to add to it. So I think this is more decorative stuff. And it brings up another issue I've noticed, and that is the older self-harm issue. Now, it seems that it's quite easy to actually slice yourself with one of these if you're doing these tricks. Now, this is because the tendency when you're pulling it back this way would be to pull your index finger back towards you to power it coming back, and some people would fold their wrist inward. So if you could imagine, once you do this, pull my index finger back, it is lined up perfectly to catch me on the forearm. Now, you can solve this quite easily by, if you always pop your wrist this way whenever you bring it back, no matter what, you're never going to get yourself. Folding the wrist inward, of course, you're going to hit yourself. Which is quite funny, because there's even instructional videos. There's this one dude dual wielding Karambits, and his wrist literally looks like I don't know, some depressed teenager that's into cutting themselves. Now, basically, it's a very superficial cut. If you did catch yourself, you're literally just going across the street for attention, not down the highway for results. But in all reality, you shouldn't be cutting yourself with your own knife. I mean, I would not recommend that one be a self-harm enjoyer with one of these, or any weapon for that matter. Like, I've had an accident or two, but it's definitely unintentional, and it was definitely not from doing, just needless stuff like this. Now, you can do all these tricks, no reason to do them with an actual sharp one if you're so inclined to do so. But that still leaves the question of, okay, what's some real Karambit techniques? Well, first of all, I found a video by this gentleman who basically broke it down to 12 main cutting techniques. Now, I'm the master, I just watched his video, absorbed what I could, but essentially a lot of his techniques are cuts, utilising it this way, and also some traps. Now, what I mean by traps is not what you think I mean. Basically, a trap is where you either catch someone's strike, or even if they're standing in the guard, to pull their arm down. Now, what he talks about is sometimes where you come back like this with the Karambit, he's coming behind the person's arm and pulling it back. So if you can imagine, if the person strikes, say, you pull their arm back this way, there's no edge on this side, so you're not going to cut them. But by removing their guard, you open them up for your strike. Some interesting stuff. I'd recommend watching the video. I'll put a link to the description, a little link to the video, I should say, in the description. So, the main techniques for the Karambit, the most useful ones, seem to be cutting with a variety of strikes. He always pulls it back tight. Yeah, the pretty interesting one where he punched forward and then come up. Now, obviously, if you hit forward, you can use this ring to reinforce the shot and then come up. Imagine hitting someone in the stomach and then gutting them. Or even worse, if you were to level change and hit someone and then come up, it's not going to go well for them at all. Now, a traditional Karambit, like I said, the blade is kind of sickle shaped, and this might not make sense considering like most longer swords are curved the other way. Now, if you can imagine, you hit someone with a longer sword and you drag the blade down, you do like a drawing cut, and having the blade curved that way facilitates that style of cutting better. However, with a shorter blade, that is an option. So basically, the point of having it like a sickle is the point hits first, catches inside the target, and scoops more meat towards the actual cutting surface. So you get a better cut. Now, these are smaller cuts, obviously. You're not going to be able to slice too deeply into someone's torso. However, if you were to catch them on the arms or the biceps, or especially the throat, having a small curved sickle-shaped blade will just scoop just enough flesh to make a pretty nasty and threatening wound. If you caught someone across the arm, you'd disable their arm. Obviously, that would be a kill shot. If you took someone across the neck, not that I'd recommend any of this stuff be done. You shouldn't leave your house as far as I'm concerned. But I'll say that. But basically, here's my second critique. It's not a traditional or a classic style Karambit because the blade curves outwards that way and there is no defined point on it. Like I said, this is not sharp at all. So basically, it sort of fails as a traditional Karambit. Now, I don't mind that so much, but if you are a stickler and want a real Karambit, this might not quite do the job. And you know, watching this guy too inspired me. I might someday down the line get an actual one and test it out. So, me personally, I would rather hold it in this grip here. Now, there's 3 notches here for the fingers, and there's this indentation here for your thumb. Now that just fits absolutely snugly in the hand. It gives you good control to perform any cane technique, and that just feels so much better, so much more right than a traditional Karambit grip like this or like this. So for me personally, I would probably utilize it in this manner here rather than this, but that's just personal taste. And I think for this blade here, it's not a traditional Karambit blade, so you probably would be better off striking a target this way here, but we're going to find out. Alright, so it looks like it's time to do some test cutting. For today's test, I thought I'd just use a classic pool noodle. Obviously, you're going to have a tough time cutting a piece of tatami with such a small blade, and yeah, pool noodle it is because they're cheap and I had one laying around, so we're going to find out how well we can cut with the Karambit. Okay, in fairness, the first couple of shots I'm going to try in classic Karambit style like this. Like I said, I am totally not used to cutting this way, so If it looks not so good, it's my fault, not necessarily the knife's fault. I only watched that video this morning of a guy demonstrating some cuts, and let's give it a go. I never cut with this underhanded grip before, so it's something new for both me and the viewer. Let's try it out. Okay, that was a lot easier than I thought, and I got a fairly deep cut. I don't know how well that's showing on the thing, but yeah, range with this style of technique seems to be, I thought, the hardest thing. But if you could imagine punching it, it definitely cut into. I'm not getting the full way through. I'll try. Okay, that backhand nearly got the full way through. It's going to be tough simply because the blade is actually smaller than the diameter of the pool noodle, but it's making some pretty meaty cuts. So yeah. Actually, I could get used to this. I should probably actually train them more. Try that, but I was completely inaccurate. So here and up. That is not working as well as I thought it would. I'll try again. Let's try a hard one. Let's try going up. Oh, I took a chunk out. It's not Karambit unless you spin it like this. Oh, oh, oh. Some of the actual cuts are quite good, but I don't think spinning it is going to help out. Yeah, like I said, that's not going to do much. You have to really do proper cutting, and I quite like this overhand one, which was cut number 1, and if you think about it, that corresponds to the same line as cut number 1 with sabre or whatnot, where you're coming down, you'd be attacking here. But it seems quite easy to get a decent cut, and you're sort of covering yourself a bit. Great cut 1. Now I might turn it over, cut across. Yeah, it's biting into it a lot more than I thought it would. I definitely need to buy a proper Karambit to see if I could cut straight through that, or even the tatami, because even this tiny little curve here is biting into it fairly well. Okay, so as you can see, I've just turned it around. I've got a fresh face to the old pool noodle, and I'm going to give it a few shots doing what I think would be my preferred method, which is basically this style. Now, although I prefer holding the sabre in like a hammer grip or like this with the thumb ring in, and prefer doing the little finger maneuvers, obviously that's a bit hard on such a small handle, especially one that's molded with finger holes. So for this style, I think this grip here, although I don't like that at all when it comes to actual swords, having the thumb on the back here, I feel that will work a bit better with this. That feels a lot better with a shorter blade. So we're going to see how we go. We're just going to try a few cuts from this grip here, which I think will be my preferred grip, personally speaking. Nice. Nice. Right, it moves fairly fast. It's biting in a lot better than I thought it would. So we'll try and see if we can actually get the whole way through. So I've got to get, I think, a really perfect distance and try. I can quite get there to actually pull through. Oh, 3 3/4 of the way through. It's painfully close to going right the way through it. That one there, when it's just getting 3/4 of the way through. I think we're limited by the length of the blade. You really have to push past it to actually get some. I think I knocked it down more than anything. I definitely like the design of this, despite the fact it is somewhat awkward to go from Knuckle Duster to knife. You need to unthread the fingers in order to do that, then go back. I definitely prefer this style of grip over the Karambit style grip. However, this was getting some nice cuts, particularly that overhand one. And I think I'm definitely going to have to look into getting an actual Karambit and trying it out, because yeah, I could see myself coming to like that a fair bit. Admittedly, I do very little with actual small blades. I usually prefer longer swords, and it probably showed in my approach to some of the strokes. However, yeah, like I said, this is a nice little piece. Would I recommend them? I think it's definitely worth the bang for the buck. Quality wise, it's only a light test we've done, but it seems to have held up a fair bit. It is not, there's no movement or anything in any of the parts. So yeah, I would actually recommend this if it looks like something you'd like. Anyway, till next time, do zobaczenia. Goodbye.